Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology, and today we are going to take some time out to hear the stories that you have been sharing with us over the last couple of months. These are stories that you guys have been submitting to us through the comments section using the hashtag grabbed or through our email address grabbed@nightlightastrology.com. If you've never heard this series before, if you're new to the channel, basically what happens is that we make a call regularly on the channel for stories. If you have a story that matches with one of the transits, we ask that you put it in the comments section using the hashtag grabbed, or email it to us grabbed@nightlightastrology.com. We use that word grab because one of the names for the planets in the ancient Indian tradition was graha, which means grabber. It has a dual meaning. It can mean the way in which the planets grab us unconsciously. Our lives get played out by the planets, so to speak. And then, of course, with studying astrology comes an ability to see the hands of the planets and to grasp what they're saying and what they're teaching us. And so astrology is really, in a sense, about going from being grabbed by the forces of karma and fate and pulled along rather unconsciously to becoming more conscious about it. And one of the ways we do that is to celebrate the stories of the planets and the way they show up in our lives. So this series is dedicated to all of you and to storytelling and to learning and embodying the planetary archetypes through hearing people's stories, which I think is one of the best ways to learn astrology. So in these episodes, you're going to hear me sharing your stories that you have sent in to us. And if you ever want to share a story in the future, use the hashtag grabbed, tell us the transit, and then tell us your story in the comments section, or email us your story, grabbed@nightlightastrology.com. But just don't share anything that you don't mind, that you don't want us using in one of these episodes. All right, on that note, these transits range from eclipse season to Jupiter-Uranus and up to maybe Jupiter's entrance into Gemini, I think. But anyway, without further ado, let's get into it. I'm going to share with you guys there were hundreds of stories that you guys sent us, and I just go through them and I try to find some stories that I think are compelling and maybe something that I've never heard before. There's always, you've never heard it all. There's as many new experiences of the planets as there are new days and different people. So all right. Hello, Nightlight. My Jupiter-Uranus story has snuck up on me suddenly, but it is welcomed. Goes on to tell a little bit about their chart. When Jupiter made its way to conjoin Uranus, I assumed I would have more changes at work. Instead, I began feeling this desire to try tofu for whatever reason. So I did, and I loved it. Then I began looking at my coffee pot in disgust. Then, like dominoes, odd things began happening with food. I swear I wasn't consciously planning it in any way. But in these past weeks, since the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Taurus, I've quit meat and coffee, suddenly started eating a vegetarian diet, tofu, fresh fruits and vegetables, green tea, no grease. Everything is different. And oddly enough, for this one pot of black coffee a day and fried fast food person, it feels so easy and natural. I'm not trying to eat any certain way, really. I'm just eating what feels right. It's an entirely unplanned lifestyle change in the way of my health. I am so surprised. Excuse me. Yeah. What I love about astrology is that at some point the planets will be orbiting around your dinner plate. They will be quietly orbiting inside of your refrigerator, and you'll see them somehow floating alongside of you when you're at the grocery store choosing your food. It can happen that way. Here's another one. About a year ago, I started a new job in the beauty industry that turned out to be a bit of a nightmare. I had a difficult manager and was in a high-stress environment that felt very binding and confining. 3 days before the Aries solar eclipse, I found out that I got into my dream international program in Sri Lanka. I immediately put in my 2 weeks notice at my current very stressful job, and my final day is on the day before the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. Wow. I love that. Here's what I love about astrology. What I love about astrology is that even when you know something unexpected is coming with a planet like Uranus, when it happens, it is still totally unexpected and not something that you could have seen coming, even though you knew something was coming that you couldn't see coming. And that is one of the coolest things about astrology. You can predict archetypally what kinds of themes, patterns, topics, but it's so rare that you can guess what exactly will happen, which is why we get to be both amazed by the accuracy of astrology and surprised by the novelty of life. Astrology keeps both alive. This is my boss's story. He's a department chair at a university. He and his boss, the dean, have had a rocky relationship. During the Jupiter-Uranus transit, the dean asked him to resign his chair position, take a sabbatical, and then return as a regular faculty member, a demotion. He said he was shocked and angry for a few days, and then that feeling transformed into a feeling of relief and freedom. He'd been so haggard from trying to please this dean and getting rebuffed. I just saw him and he seemed so relaxed and content. There's Jupiter-Uranus. That surprising freedom, the freedom that you didn't know that you needed, but once you have it, you realize you're very relieved to have. I love that astrology helps us also to see the planets guiding the footsteps of people around us, not just ourselves, although that's obviously huge. It's like you can see little lanterns moving out in front of people's path, just a few steps ahead, moving through this dark and magical forest, guiding the people that you love. And then we can trust that other people's paths are sacred and guided. And that takes a lot of stress off from ourselves as well, because sometimes we can feel responsible for other people. And it's nice to just hand that over to the planets and say, I know you've got these people that I love. I know you love them more than I even could, or at least equally. I'm 30 and I've never owned a vehicle before. Living in big bus-friendly cities, I never had much need for a car, but I recently started a new job that was much farther from my house, and I was spending 15 plus hours a week on the bus and losing my mind. As the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction was applying, to be exact, I decided I'd had enough of this carless, frugal lifestyle, and I was finally ready to get some wheels. During this exact conjunction, I went out and viewed half a dozen cars. Just as the planets were separating, I settled on a 2009 Toyota Corolla in excellent condition. With the conjunction happening in Taurus, I like how I decided to go for a car known for its stability and reliability. Very Taurian traits. Here's what I love. I love about astrology that you can get a car and that the car is a planetary car. Your relationship with that car will never be mundane. And it's something as simple as a car. I love that astrology gives us that in our lives. It's really special, and we should not overlook how simple but profound that is. On April 19th, that's the day before the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, a drunk driver drove into my home in her Jeep, backed out, and then escaped to her home down the same street. The impact crumpled my daughter's bed in which she was sleeping and pushed it into the wall of the next bedroom, breaking beams and almost harming my bed-bound father-in-law, who had been discharged into our care post-brain injury. My daughter often likes to sleep on a pallet of blankets on the floor. She had opted that night to sleep in her bunk bed. Miraculously, neither one of them had a scratch on them. The same could not be said for me. My legs sported bruises and scratches from struggling over the debris in my daughter's bedroom doorway. This Jupiter-Uranus was sitting exactly on my natal Chiron. Like, what can you even say about that? Oh my God. But here's the thing is that, and I don't mean this to sound trite, it is true. Planets will crash into our lives. They will come through accidents. They will come through injuries. They will come through what looks like mayhem and misfortune. What's that car insurance commercial, Mayhem? And it's like a personified guy chasing things around and wrecking them. And I don't say that to take away how traumatizing that must have been. But what I love is that the planets, if you live an astrological lifestyle, it makes it difficult to decide, in hindsight at least, whether that event was good or bad, because you can't deny that that was a cosmic event. You don't have to know what it means. You don't have to gather some lesson from it, but you can observe that somewhere in the universe, the psychedelic mandala of space and time reflected that kind of event as it happened. What can you do but shrug and go like, well, glad no one was injured worse, glad everyone was relatively okay. And the planets, they just command such respect and awe and reverence that it makes it a little harder to think about good and bad events in black and white terms, even if there's an element of an event that's truly bad. Anyway, my story is short and sweet, but I'm on testosterone for hormone replacement therapy, and around the conjunction is when the medication started showing the physical signs of transitioning. some face changes, facial hair, and at the time I'm typing this, I think my voice is deepening as well. And they mentioned that this is happening in their 10th house and is literally translating to them showing up in the world publicly in a different way, more masculine for the world to see. And this is happening as Jupiter. This was happening as Jupiter Uranus conjoined. So yes, a revolution in how your appearance and how you show up in the world. It's beautiful. I love it when our physical appearances transform in the shape of the planets. I mean, to me that is truly profound. As someone who's been going through physical transformation myself the past couple of years with planets in Taurus in my first house, I totally get it. It's so amazing when the planets literally start, or if you have a Jupiter first house here and you put on weight or something, it's like, anyway, you get what I'm saying. Couple that are a little heavier. Yesterday, the day of the eclipse, this is the Aries eclipse, I got news from my close cousin that her brother was missing, that no one had seen him since Saturday night. Later yesterday, my cousin sent a message. They had found him. He had been found drowned. He was a sailor. Apparently he was spending time with his colleagues in a restaurant, had been returning to their ship alone in the night and fallen into the water. He was 44. My cousin and her parents are broken. And this was right after the eclipse, while Mars was applying to make a conjunction with Saturn and Pisces in the 3rd house, which is a place of siblings and cousins. That's truly devastating, and I'm so sorry for your loss and for your family's loss. Astrology helps me to realize that souls change shapes and forms. And the reason that I put my faith in that, even as we have to mourn and grieve and sort of throw our hands up at the tragic nature of life, is that you can see the shape of a person's departure in the stars. And that, for me, means that nothing is misplaced, that the soul is an eternal being without beginning or end that changes shapes and forms just as surely as the patterns of the universe are intelligible and they keep changing. We can trust the timing of a soul's departure ultimately, eventually, even if it is unfathomable in the moment. Aries eclipse. My husband was hit by a car on his bike, and the car took off, leaving him behind injured. He was lucky to get to the side of the road and call 911, and he wasn't too injured to do so. The eclipse was happening in his 8th house, with Mars conjoining his natal Saturn. And the eclipse happened in her 7th house. And I feel lucky that I didn't lose my husband in this accident. We're both still pretty upset, but our car insurance is covering his medical bills. Police never found the driver, but my husband said the car waited for him to get close enough to hit him so he could not evade the car. He feels it was an intentional hit. My mom is pretty religious and was praying earlier that week when she had a vision of being hit and killed by this car. She began praying for his safety before it even happened, told my dad she was really worried but didn't want to scare me with her premonition. I'm convinced he survived because of the prayer protecting him beforehand. I always make him wear a helmet, and it saved his life. Wear your helmet, kids. Whew. Wow. I believe every word of that. So I love knowing that astrology, this is like an imperfect metaphor, but astrology is a helmet. Astrology is a kind of helmet. Right before the eclipse, this is the eclipse in Aries, received a phone call that my great-grandmother was in the hospital in her final stages of dementia. She passed away on the eclipse. Hilda's flipping over. She passed away on the eclipse. I had another great-grandmother that passed away from dementia 8 years ago, and I feel that Venus retrograde may have had something to do with that. Thanks for the space to share. Have a great day. Hilda's. She's like, and life goes on playing. What I love is that, again, when a light is eclipsed literally in the sky, we sometimes see the light leaving the body and preparing to enter another. And so I hope that you and your family are doing okay after the loss of your grandmother. Interesting connection too with a great grandmother passing with previous Venus transit. So this one also was the Libra eclipse that happened in the spring. My partner suddenly died of a brain aneurysm. We are in our second trimester of pregnancy with our first child. Clearly, I'm devastated, but as a follower of astrology, I'm also trying to understand this incredibly difficult moment in the context of his and of my life. Okay, I apologize there. Hilda was sort of needing to get out, so I had to go take her out and pause the recording. So, recapping, right before the eclipse, my partner suddenly died of a brain aneurysm. We are in our second trimester of pregnancy with our first child. Clearly, I'm devastated, but as a follower of astrology, I'm also trying to understand this incredibly difficult moment in the context of his and of my life. So here's a grab story if you choose to use it. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's a hard one. I think probably all of us listening would extend you prayers and love, good thoughts, and the wish that in time, as you grieve and process and move on, that his memory and his energy and all of the best qualities in him would live on through you and your child and the bond that you'll have, and that there be dharma behind all of it, that there be a sense of a sacred contract of some kind that can maybe in time play out in ways that are understandable, that grant deeper peace and understanding. Because I'm sure that right now there's just it's not going to be something to wrap one's head around. Anyway, to me, sometimes when there's no words, there's no reasons that you can find. And I've seen a lot of people over a long time in astrological counseling that have gone through things that, I can't even imagine. But what I trust is that the planets convey things that are there. They're ready for us at some point when we're ready. They also never rush us. They never force us into any pat interpretation or meaning. They don't tell us, look, the grief, the feeling that life is sometimes cruel and indifferent, like that doesn't need to, you don't have to bypass that with an interpretation. If and when we want to see it, the sky is there for us to help us with our process, but it also does not force itself. I hope that I'm glad that you have astrology in your life. I really am. And I hope you take your time. Hi, Adam. After your video where you discussed Richard Tarnus's idea that the Jupiter-Uranus alignments could produce seeding moments of innovation, I had an aha moment. In early 2011, just after the 3 Jupiter-Uranus conjunctions, for absolutely no reason, I was inspired to use fractals and chaos theory as a basis for graphic design layout. I filled many pages of my drawing tablet with ideas that poured out of my head. I still look at the pages with a bit of awe because I'm not sure where the ideas came from. I was familiar with chaos theory from a few books I'd read. I didn't pursue the idea, but it was a seed that started to sprout in 2016 when I started creating a design system called fractal design. I then connected these ideas to Frank Lloyd Wright's own system of organic design, and I now put my aesthetic under the same umbrella as Wright's. I've used these ideas to design several pieces of furniture. On a whim, I look back at the date when I first read Chaos by James Gleick, and it was August of 1989 when Jupiter opposed Uranus. You cannot make this stuff up. Thanks as always. I love it when astrology shows up in terms of the shapes of our thoughts and the evolution and development of thought patterns and things that we become excited about, ideas that we become excited about that are themselves archetypal. That is a beautiful, beautiful thing. truth is like there, and it's never had a beginning or an end, and there's always more of it. And there's no one has like proprietary claim or rights over truth. It's there to be experienced. And when we tap into it, it always feels new. It always feels like it's the first time. Astrology, I think, is amazing in that it points us back to this kind of eternal nature of truth. We can see it, it's there, it's intelligible, and it's always brand new, just like the planets are never in the same place twice. I was burning yard debris earlier today, and the wind blew embers into the woods, starting a brush fire. I had to call the fire department. Thankfully, everyone is okay, and the fire was contained, but geez, it was pretty scary. The Taurus rising. I thought that was interesting, given that Jupiter-Uranus in the first house, the sort of sudden blaze of fire. They mentioned the moon was in Leo as well. Anyway, I love that astrology allows us to literally see something physical, like the sparking of a brush fire, or sometimes like your power goes out, or whatever, a transformer in the neighborhood blows or whatever. There's a lightning strike of a tree somewhere and it downs the telephone line, and you go, oh my God, like that was Uranus, or whatever the case might be. There's a way that we can revel in the precision of things that are destructive, like a brush fire. It feels wild and chaotic, but it's not a mistake. I like this one. In 2017, during the Jupiter-Uranus opposition, I gave my first presentations to astrology organizations, NCGR Philadelphia, Northern New Jersey, and the Astrological Society of Princeton, on what I called astrological aromatherapy. I'd spent the previous year thinking about a way to blend my interest in astrology, herbalism, and aromatherapy, created a system I call Sense of Self, creating a personalized botanical perfumes based on the birth chart. The perfume is meant to aromatically support the temperament as assessed by the birth chart. Since 2017, I've created over 600 personalized perfumes and have never once duplicated a scent. As my Venus is in Taurus, this book is about aromatic beauty. If the birth chart could have a sense of self would be it. The response to the perfume is always joy. Since that time, I've labored away. Nice way to say I sequestered myself in a room and read about Hippocratic temperaments, the limbic system, perfumery techniques, etc. Every winter trying to write this book. I'm much more of an herbalist astrologer than writer, so it was an arduous process for me. It took years to write, as I only wrote in the winter months when my garden was sleeping and my business making herbal products, SuzSavs.com, were not my main focus. I hid in my room every winter for 4 years writing and rewriting. Saturn transited my 6th, so it was laborious. I had the great good fortune of meeting an herbalist and writing professor, Dana O'Driscoll of Druid's Garden Art, in 2022, who took on the task of going through my files, editing my work, and seeing that the book got published. What a task it was. She believed in me and had the skills I didn't to bring the book into the world. 2 weeks ago, the book finally got published, and this would be with Jupiter-Uranus. I gave my first presentation about it last weekend and sold out of the books I had printed on the first day. Jupiter-Uranus conjunction fell in my 9th house. Yeah, love that. Forgotten that it all started on the opposition of Jupiter-Uranus until I listened to your talk about the historical dates. I found a slide from the first presentation I gave in 2017. On that slide, I wrote, with Jupiter opposing Uranus, we can create breakthroughs in understanding, heading in a direction we haven't before. Yeah, I love that. I love when astrology transits connect periods of our lives that we didn't know were connected or forgot, and we don't understand sometimes, we don't see, we don't get that there is a larger process of creativity happening behind any particular creative project we are in the midst of. That project is really just the bubbling up of a much larger process of alchemical change, and astrology helps us recognize that. And I think that takes a lot of the pressure off from us to feel like we have to be in control of every creative process. 2000, I was in my first full year of living in the house I bought at age 25. Flash forward to this upcoming ingress back into Gemini, and I'm prepping to sell this place and go elsewhere after 25 years, which would be about 2 full Jupiter cycles. I expect I will use proceeds from selling to make a down payment on whatever new home I find, and this means I'll be straddling 2 houses as I detach from the old to the new. An almost literal expansion of my house of self, whether or not I actually physically reduce my home size dimensions with Jupiter and Gemini. I love that. There are cycles at work in life, always. Always. And those cycles and those patterns, they hold us. They are the cradle of life itself. We are always being held by the universe, and our minds are not meant to solve anything as much as they are to appreciate everything. So I'll leave it there. I hope you guys enjoy these stories. They come from you. You are the heart of this channel with the way in which you share everything that you experience of the transits. It's so much fun to share my stories, to share your stories, to be here together, unpacking these beautiful patterns that constitute our day-to-day life in this enchanting and beautiful cosmos. All right, that's it for today. Have a good one. Bye.